Good evening, everybody. This is Mayor Cornell Harvey, and I'd like to open up or call to order the City Commission meeting dated Wednesday, November the 17th. This is a hybrid meeting where Commissioner Williams and myself are in person, and Commissioner Julie Martin, Commissioner Johnny Cason, and our Mayor Pro Tem Felicia Harris are joining us through via Zoom, streaming live. We will rise here, who all in the courtroom, to we're going to do a work session before we do our commission meeting, and we will have we got 2 items to deal with this afternoon. So we'll just dive right into it as I open this work session up. Our first is a presentation from Mr. Ken Bleakley, founder, chairman of Bleakley Advisory Group, to give a presentation regarding tax allocation district. Mr. Bleakley, are you on board?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. And thank you for coming to share what you have with us this afternoon. I'm pretty sure you probably can share your screen with everybody as well.
That would be great. Can everyone see that? Is that showing up?
Yes, it is, sir.
Great. Should I just go ahead? Everybody's ready? All right, I'll just proceed. What we wanted to do is discuss the current status of the tax allocation district that the city of Brunswick formed back in 2017. And the mission here is to get the district operational so that as redevelopment occurs in the city, you'll be able to move ahead and consider the use of TAD as a financing vehicle. We have been working with Travis and the city staff over the last couple months to prepare a set of policies and procedures that would govern potential use of TAD funding in the city. And what we're going to do today is just highlight the key points in that. I believe you've gotten a copy of it previously, and I'm just going to give a couple examples and sort of highlight how we are proposing that the city would structure its TAD financing program. And this is based on our experience around the state, working with lots of cities and counties who have similar TAD programs. And this is kind of the best thinking, I guess, at this point, as to how to structure these programs. As you probably remember or may remember, I know you have many things on your plate, but the city of Brunswick established what's called the Historic Core TAD in the end of 2017. And at that time, the city council approved it. You received the approval of the county and the county school system to participate in the TAD. But one last item was not completed, which was the certification of the tax base by the Georgia Department of Revenue. So we began the process over the summer to update that. And at the discussions with Department of Revenue and based on our experience, the 2017 digest is too old to certify at this point. So what we've concluded is that the 2020 digest would be the most appropriate, which would be basically the one that's already finalized for last year. So we have had discussions with Department of Revenue, and we are actually working with the tax assessor here on getting a final number for the digest to submit. And it looks like it's going to be a little bit less than what we had in 2017. It's going to be around $24 million. So that process will occur by the end of the year. We'll be preparing a letter for the city to send to Department of Revenue. Department of Revenue typically takes several weeks to review it. And then sometime in January, you'll get a letter back from them saying the digest has been certified. Once that's done, then the district is operational, and starting in next year, you'll be able to actually use the TAD financing.
Can I ask a quick question, Ken?
Sure.
I'm not sure I understand why the process was dropped, I guess. You know, we're working, I think, with you, going through that process of trying to get the digest and the redevelopment powers. Is it a good thing that the digest is lower now? Because we're looking for a larger incremental growth over the next few years?
Yes, in fact, it's beneficial that we use the 2020 number. If we went with 2017, we'd actually have, what we would have is what's called a decrement. And before we could use the TAD money, we would have to get back to that 2017 number before there would be any surplus. So by using 2020, we set the bar at the value that year. Basically, everything additional value will be positive going forward. So it's actually it's a plus.
Okay, because I had been, I think over the last 2 years, asking for a report on where we were with the TAD and our tax basis and digest and everything, and just recently came to find out that was the case. So I wasn't sure. Anyways, moving forward, we hope that this will all be good news now that we can start identifying specific projects as we have some incremental revenue coming in.
Yeah, you'll be in a net positive position. So it lets you start right out without having any kind of what's called a decrement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. The next part of the process is, when you implement a TAD, I mean, some cities don't set policies and procedures, but we usually find if they don't, then when the first deal comes along, they're kind of scrambling, okay, how do we sort this out? So more and more cities and counties are saying, okay, let's set up a policy and procedure that we can follow. And then when the applicants come in, they know what they have to do. And we also have a benchmark that we can put against folks. But let me just give you a little background, because I know it's been a while. This is the map of the TAD district that you folks approved in 2017. Basically, that yellow sort of ochre colored area are the parcels that are in that area.
Your slideshow is not showing up as a slideshow. It's just showing the front tab. So are you?
I'm not sure, I'm doing something wrong, I guess.
Yeah, go to slideshow and see if it'll pull up the slide full screen and then go forward. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better, but can you go to full screen so that it?
Yeah, that was what I thought I did, but
go up to slideshow and see if it'll.
Oh, I know. Hold on. Yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you.
It has to do with this. Hold on 1 second.
Ms. McDevitt, this wasn't included in our packet, was it?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look back.
No, it's not in our packets.
It was not.
Okay.
Oh, I know I can do. Hold on 1 second.
We had the application and the policies and procedures are in our packet.
That's better.
Yeah,
So
let me,
you can go forward if you like.
let me escape here. I'm sure it usually gives you an option to change the screen. That's not. Well, it's not doing that. How's that?
Much better.
Much better? Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Let me go back here. Hold it.
Okay, there you are.
Is that better? Yeah, I had two screens going. That was the problem. I figured out what was going on. So the map that you see there is basically the TAD area, and to orient you, it's basically Newcastle Street on the west side, Gloucester Street running through the center of the city, and then it runs along It also has Norwich, a segment of Norwich included, and then it runs up Glen Avenue there a little bit. So it's everything in the orange kind of ochre color. When the city adopted the TAD, you set some funding priorities for the historic district, and you're not held to these, but these are basically sort of guidelines, and we've adopted them in the policies and procedures. And the items that you emphasized of where you wanted the TAD money spent would be transportation and mobility enhancements, site-specific development activities, infrastructure improvements, public space, landscaping, lighting, and other improvements. And then you kept money for other redevelopment initiatives, because there's always new things come along as you do this program. You've got to have some flexibility. Something comes along you hadn't anticipated. So those were kind of the funding priorities. And just to refresh everybody again, because TAD is not a concept everybody deals with on a daily basis. Basically, TAD is Georgia's form of tax increment financing. And it's a real simple idea with some complicated rules, but the basic idea is you create a district that needs redevelopment, which you've done, and you say, okay, the current taxes from that district that we collect for the city, county, and schools will continue to go to the city, county, and schools. But any growth that we get after we do that, that growth goes into a fund that we can reinvest back into the district. So that's the process you went through in 2017, creating the TAD and basically setting up those boundaries. And so once we get the base set here with Department of Revenue, starting in 22, you'll have that surplus that'll be there'll be a separate fund that money will go to. And that money is what you can reinvest back into the TAD. Now, you don't have to. You can accumulate that money for a while, and if no good projects come along, then you just return the money to the three governments at some point. But what you're hoping is you're going to get developments that come in and say, hey, we want to do this new project in town or wherever that you think meets those criteria, and then this is where you get the funding from. So we talked about the digest certification. We're in the midst of that process now. We had a good conversation with the county yesterday. We're waiting on the final valuation numbers from the 2020. We prepared it and they're reviewing it, and I would expect we'll have that by next week. So at that point, we'll be ready to go ahead and send a draft letter to the city manager and then request that you guys send it on to Department of Revenue. Let's talk a little bit about policies and procedures. And I want to give you some flavor for what's included here. And again, we base this on kind of our experience in doing this around the state. The policies and procedures deal with who is going to be the redevelopment agent and who is going to review the TAD applications. And then it gives the applicant what are the purposes and use of the TAD funding. How would the tax increment generated by the project be used? What are we looking for in terms of project economics? What kind of benefits does the city want to see before they would commit their TAD dollars? And what kind of positive impact are we looking for from the project? And the process, this looks cumbersome, but actually this is kind of the process outlined in the procedures. Let me just kind of walk you through it quickly, because I think it'll give you a flavor for sort of how this works. Typically what we see, a developer has a project and they said, hey, we think this qualifies for funding. They will come in and meet with the economic development director, with Travis, discuss the project. And in some cases, Travis will say, no, that's not going to qualify. They're not going to go any further than that. Or it'd say, yeah, this looks like something maybe that would meet our criteria. Why don't I go discuss it internally? And then typically you have an ad hoc committee, usually the city manager, the economic development director, maybe the downtown development folks or the planning director. They sit down, review the preliminary idea, see if they think it has merit. If it has merit, they go back through the ED director to the developer and say, yeah, why don't you submit a complete application? We think this looks like something we would consider. At that point, the developer fills out the application form, answers a whole bunch of questions that you would want answered about the application, and submits it to Travis for review. He and the staff review it. Lots of times it's incomplete. You got to go back, say, okay, I need more information on this. But eventually you get to a complete application. And when that application is ready to go, they will convene what we call the TAD Advisory Committee. And the advisory committee's job is to review the applications and make sure they're in compliance with the city policies and procedures. They, again, will usually interview the developer, have discussions with them, maybe modify the application. This is kind of where typically the TAD funding process gets really refined, in that discussions with the advisory committee. They then will make a recommendation to the city commission. And that recommendation would be either to fund the application, to modify the application, or not fund it. And that recommendation from the advisory committee is something the commission would then consider as it makes its decision whether to fund, modify, or disapprove the application. It's up to the commission, because in the state law, you are the designated what's called the local redevelopment agent for the city. So it's ultimately the commission's decision. But we usually find the advisory committee is really helpful in kind of weeding out issues and getting things in kind of a final format. If the city commission decides to approve the TAD application, the next step in the process is city manager or Travis would work with the developer, hammer out a development agreement that follows the recommendation. And then that agreement is signed. And when that's signed, at that point, the city executes its part of the agreement, which is to provide the funding, and the developer has to do whatever they committed to in the development agreement. So, process-wise, this will probably take somewhere between 60 and 90 days to get through this process, depending on how frequently you want to review TAD applications. Most cities we see maybe do this on a quarterly basis if they have enough applications, or they just do it when they get it. Somebody comes to them with a project. They don't meet if there's no projects to consider. But that's kind of the process that we've outlined here. And in our experience, it gives you several places to make refinements and corrections. And it ends up that the commission is looking at really complete packages and ideas rather than having to deal with things that are in more preliminary stages. So, it's a little more cumbersome, but we think in the end it will streamline things as you go through it. When you consider TAD financing, just by summary, there's really three ways you can finance a project using TAD money. There are variations on this, but these are kind of the typical things. Probably the one everybody knows about is you can issue tax-exempt bond financing. And while that's kind of the signature program, we don't see it used as much anymore. The reason being, it really only works when the project's around $10 million or more, because the cost of issuance of bonds is very expensive. And what we typically find is most projects done in the state are smaller than that, and they don't really justify the expense of doing a bond. But you have that power. You have the ability under TAD. If you had a big project came along, you wanted to do it, you're set up basically to do that. The other two approaches are more common. One is to basically, instead of using tax-exempt bonds, you basically finance through a bank. And it's basically a bank loan that either the city arranges or the developer arranges, where the TAD increment is pledged to pay back a note or a loan. And so they might have a 15-year loan where the TAD increment pays that loan back over time. It's typically a simpler process, doesn't require the level of due diligence that you have to go through in a bond issue. And we typically see in projects that are in the $1 million to $10 million range, that's a more typical way to do it. The most common way we're seeing around the state is called pay-as-you-go. And pay-as-you-go is probably the simplest for the city to execute. If you think about it, it's effectively like a rebate of taxes. We can't call it a rebate, that's not permitted in Georgia. But what happens is you would say, we're going to give you back the amount of taxes or some percent of the amount of taxes you paid for your project for a set number of years, typically somewhere between 10 and 20 years. And that money gets applied back to the project to pay for specific things that they've requested funding for. Usually it's infrastructure, might be site cleanup, it might be remediation, it might be a lot of times sewer and water type costs, or maybe a parking deck. And so the developer gets paid back over time. They may then go to their lenders and use that pay-as-you-go and finance off that, but the city doesn't have to get involved. All they do is basically make that payment each year to the developer for the specified period. I just thought I'd give you kind of a simple example of how this works, because it's always, these things sound so esoteric until you got like a real world example. But let's say a developer came to the city and said, we want to do a 10-unit condo project. That's, the units are going to be worth $275,000 a unit, and our project's about $2.75 million. The development's going to pay about $30,000 a year in incremental property taxes, net of the $5,000 that's already in the base amount. So that amount continues to go to the city, county, and school, but there's $30,000 of annual increment. Turns out, as part of the new construction, he's got to do $300,000 in utility upgrades and improvements. So he comes to the city and says, we would like to use the TAD funding to cover this portion of our total development cost of $2.5 million, that $300,000. That's about 13% of the total cost. So under PAYGO, what the city could agree to is, we will rebate that $30,000. You go pay your taxes, and within 60 days, we'll rebate that $30,000 back to you. In this case, for example, for 10 years, until you have reached $300,000. And that lowers his development costs, which makes the project more feasible. And the city, their commitment is to pay that once they receive those proceeds from the development, to pay that back. They'll receive it from the county, say in November, and then they pay it back, say, first of the year, first quarter. The developer, for their part, has to provide the documentation that that's what the utility costs were, and that they have paid those costs and their contractors are paid. And then in the 11th year, instead of that $30,000 going back to the developer, it goes back into the TAD fund and continues to accumulate in that TAD fund. So that's just kind of a pretty straightforward example. This is probably the most typical way we're seeing TADs being used around the state. And, I would expect, knowing Brunswick, the scale of projects you get, this would be kind of a likely scenario that you'd probably be presented with. So.
Do we decide how many years we're gonna have that TAD be funded, or do we just
Yes.
let it go continuously?
Yes, the city has total discretion. In other words, you might say, well, we're not going to fund the $300,000, we'll fund $250,000, and we'll do it for, I don't know what that would be, 8 years, I guess. You totally set it. They will request something, but you have total control over the amount and the term that you think is appropriate. Typically, I know this working a lot in Gainesville, we've probably done 10 projects up in Gainesville in the last couple of years. This is where the rubber meets the road. The developers come in and say, this is what we need to get the project done. And then the city will sit down with them and negotiate both the amount and the term. And sometimes they don't give them 100% of the increment. They might give them 90% or something in the increment, kind of depending on.
Okay,
So
thanks.
that's where the negotiation occurs.
And one other question I have is, if the option is used to do a bank loan with the tax increment used as the payback method, how do you know what percentage of incremental revenue is coming in that you can actually use towards that loan payment?
Great question. You have kind of two variables to think about. The kind of the conservative approach, I would call it, or the kind of the, what would you call it? The least challenging approach is, we always say everybody has to stand on their own bucket, their own bottom. So you would do a forecast at the time of the development agreement of what the property taxes from a given project would be. And that would be the amount. So the project itself would self-finance. If that project's going to pay $20,000 in taxes, your goal would be to just give them, the maximum would be $20,000 a year. You have authority to give them additional TAD money from other parts of the district. All the money in the TAD is fungible. Any money collected in the district can be applied to any project. But what we typically see is each community says, no, we want each deal to sort of stand on its own. And only if there's some really, like, let's say you wanted to do a public park project. Well, that's not going to produce any increment. But you might say, gee, we'd like to get that done. That's going to be 20,000 a year for 10 years. You have the right to use increment from elsewhere in the district and commit it to that project. But typically in a profit-making development deal, you try to make that deal self-financed, that you only give it the increment that it produces. You don't have to, you can go beyond that, but it's pretty rare. Most deals are what we call self-financed. They generate their own increment. So key thing is figuring that out right at the time you do the development agreement.
How soon, if 2020 is our tax basis year,
Yes.
how soon conceivably, and I know it depends on the size of the project and the cost, could we roll into a project?
I mean, how would you have increment to do it?
Yeah, how quickly?
2022, you'll have increment next year.
Okay,
So what'll happen is you won't have it till the end of the year.
right.
You know, people, the challenge in all these things is it's not when you calculate it, it's when they actually pay it is when you get the money. So
Yeah.
you're going to receive, the county receives those tax payments towards the latter half of the year. And then they typically sit down at sometime in November, early December, and will put the money in the TAD account at that point. But you would have in 2022.
So is it best, do most communities that have established TADs, do they bank some money for a while before they launch into a project, or does it just depend on what shows up on your doorstep, so to speak?
Well, I would say, like all good consultant answers, it depends. If the project was standing on its own, if it generated enough increment, you were confident you were going to get, let's say it generated 50,000 of increment, and you said, okay, we'll give them 40,000 to start out, you could go ahead and do it in the first year. However, like if it's the park example or something where it's not going to generate its own increment, you want to make sure that you're going to get increment from some other part of the district. You might wait a year to see what comes in the first year as your kind of base of data you're going to get. So I would look at that as either, okay, this one can self-support and I'm kind of ready to go ahead, but I'm probably not going to give them any additional increment until I see what that starts to look like in terms of the account. So,
Okay,
you know, it gets much easier by the second and third year because you've got multiple years. You've sort of seen what the pattern looks like as the taxes come in.
Ken, have there been any deals done where the promise of the payback by the city has been done? Basically saying, okay, go ahead and do your project, go ahead and spend the money. And when we get some TAP money, we'll, you know, negotiate a deal to rebate. Has that been done?
We have two problems. The answer is yes, and I'll give you an example. The city of Duluth in Gwinnett County has done that. But what Duluth has done is they've taken money from other accounts. They've actually financed with city funds that they have for development, and they reimburse themselves from the TAD proceeds. That's very unusual. I would say that's not typical of what we see around the state. Typically, the people only commit TAD funds once they're collected and they've received those funds. Because the danger is, you know, you want to make sure the increment gets created. If for some reason the project didn't happen, you don't want to have that obligation to pay an increment if it hasn't occurred. So the other challenge you have is now if that development occurs after the base is frozen in 2022, you will get the increment. So it'll be generating incremental value for the TAD, and then it's really just a question of what that number turns out to be.
I have a question. This TAC group that you talked about that kind of looks at these before it comes to the commission. What do you think? How is the makeup of that board addressed, or what should it look like?
Well, again, you've got total flexibility in how you want to set that up, but I would suggest having a mix of city staff, but also maybe some local people involved in the development industry or bankers. You want to get some folks who've got different perspectives on that committee. You know, and now in some of the jurisdictions, they as part of establishing the TAD, they've agreed to include the school board and county. In your case, that was not a contingency of the creation of the TAD. But typically you would have somebody, say, from the development authority, a local banker, maybe somebody from the chamber, folks who deal with these kind of issues on a regular basis, and have some city folks as well, so that you get a mix of perspectives. But you have to have a small enough group you can take action and they can convene. You don't want to get too many people or you never get a quorum. So it's, you know, the 5 to 9 range is probably the right size.
What would you recommend as a good number for a board such as that? 5, 7, or?
Yeah, I would say that's, you know, 5, 7, 8 folks is probably the right number. And obviously it's got to be somebody that the commission feels comfortable. They're going to be receiving their recommendations. And what we found in experience is those advisory committees, if they have credibility with the commission, that really streamlines this whole process. The commission will, you know, I've seen it in Gainesville multiple times. They will just defer to the recommendations of the advisory committee because they put that much faith in their ability to sort of screen these projects. And same thing has happened in Duluth. They're very much, you know, they look to the advisory committee to sort of shape the deal for them. And that's the ideal situation. So you don't spend, the advisory committee spends all its time doing it, and then the commission has to invest a lot of time and effort doing the same thing. You're trying to minimize the need to do that.
Can TAD financing, the incremental financing, be layered along with federal opportunity money?
Yes.
Okay, so there's really no restrictions on how you, what different vehicles you use to layer your financing on a project.
TAD is incredibly hard to set up and complicated, and because they wanted to make it deliberative. But once it's set up and you have that stream of dollars, you have very broad flexibility to commit that stream of future dollars. You know, you as a commission could say, well, as part of you know, an opportunity zone or other areas we're doing, we're going to commit 10 years of that stream from the project to that financing stack that they're doing. You have total authority to do that. So it's very flexible in that regard.
And is there an ugly side? In other words, communities that have overcommitted, you know, incremental monies and overextended on projects, and what does that look like?
Well, the great thing is with PAYGO, you don't get, there's no money unless they pay into the fund. So your agreement will say this is all subject to your building the project and paying the taxes. So there's no risk like there used to be in the 80s where you give money out and the development doesn't occur. Your money is coming in after. You're coming in at the back end, basically, when the development's up, the increment's created. And the only difference there would be, let's say you had a big surplus in the TAD account, and you said, well, to get this going, we'll give $2 million from the existing TAD account to stimulate the project. And then for whatever reason, the project doesn't happen. That potentially could be an issue. But most times we see communities, they're waiting, they're rebating money you're paying in. They're not giving you money in advance of those dollars. If they do pay in advance, it's typically a public project. It's a park or it's
Hi, Ken.
Something along those lines.
Hi, Ken. This is Travis Stiegel.
Hey,
I'm going to give, hey, man, how are you? I'm going to give an example. And if you could make sure, if you can clarify to the commission their ability to approve or not approve a PAYGO on a project with an example like this. The example says that a project is ongoing. It is currently being developed. Would the commission have the ability to approve a PAYGO amount as a project is being developed, knowing what the future taxes are going to be?
If that project, if the valuation of that, well, they have two things. Ideally, even though it's ongoing, if that valuation is not in the 2020 base, then it's just like a new project. You treat it just like a new project. If it's in the 2020 tax base, then you have the right to commit TADs, but you commit TAD revenue, but that would be revenue generated from the district more generally. So you'd be, because it would already be in the tax base. So the question would be, you know, is it in the tax base or not in the tax base?
Got it. Thank
When
you.
you say tax base, you're talking about the boundary area.
Yeah, or if the valuation had already occurred in 2020, then it's frozen in the base and that money goes to the city and schools. You don't get any increment. If that improvement is taxed 21 or 22, that's increment and you get the value of that.
Okay, thank you.
It's timing. It's a timing.
Mhm, mhm.
All right. Well, the other thing that we prepared for out of these policy and procedures is a set of application forms. And we put together these forms really to help the applicant say, well, what are they looking for? What does the city want to hear from us? And it sort of lays out a menu for them. They can submit it in their own format, but we want to make sure they address each of these topics so that when you're reviewing an application, you know about each application, who the development team is, what are they building, what's the specifics of it, the timing, how that's going to occur, what they see as the project economics. And really that's where they make the case, what's called the but-for case, that but for this TAD money, we can't get this project done. They have to make a rational argument about that. And then the other one that's really key is, do they control the site? Do they have the zoning? What's their schedule to execute the project? We get a lot of these and they don't control the site or they don't have zoning. Well, it is, you know, the likelihood of it moving ahead is delayed at least at the worst case. You want to make sure they have that. And then they basically certify things to you in terms of who the ownership entity will be, who the developers will be, and those kind of things. So we make sure you get all that in the application. And then that's the document that the advisory committee and the staff are going to review so that they can treat everybody apples to apples. They get the same information on each project. And typically you got to go back and there's some holes and you have to fill the holes. But the idea is when they're making a decision, they're comparing apples to apples. They're not looking at projects in a different perspective. And that it's worth the effort. Our experience has shown if you do that front end work, in the end, when you're making a decision, you say, hey, we did this for project A, and how does project B compare to project A? And you can make those comparisons. So action items that we've got to do, as we mentioned, we're going through the process. Right now, we've got a resolution that for your consideration to amend the redevelopment plan to use the base year as 2020. It basically keeps the map the same, but it adjusts the base year to 2020. And we need to get that approved. We need to get the letter to the Department of Revenue, which is in process right now. We need you as a commission to adopt these policies and procedures. It's not mandatory, but we always feel like if you adopt them, that gives them additional weight when you're working with the applicants to say, no, this is what the commission wants us to do. And once those three things are done, you're in the process to actually start beginning accepting applications from developers for funding, which would occur earliest in the end of 2022. And actually then start implementing the review process and hopefully start to see some bricks and mortar fly pretty shortly thereafter.
And do most communities set up a separate committee to review those applications, or is it just siphoned through city staff?
Typically, you would have our recommendation is to have a more formal committee. So it's kind of a two-step process. Staff kind of vets it at first to make sure there's enough here to merit everybody's attention. But it's probably good to have another set of eyes review it before it comes to the commission. And so we would say set up this formal advisory committee, which has city staff participants in it, but you probably have some other folks as well participate. And for example, in Gainesville, the head of their county chamber is the chairman of that group. And he's been very involved for now 4 years, looking at every application. He's very good. You know, in Duluth, we've had a similar situation. There's a civic person that's in charge. Sometimes the downtown development authority is involved. I mean, you want to have people that when their recommendation comes to the commission, you're going to feel like, okay, it's been vetted, and you don't have to do the level of due diligence. We rely on the committee to do that.
So
Thank
we
you.
determine the makeup of that.
That's correct. That's correct.
And let me just make sure that I have the clarity on understanding the base. So when you're talking about the base, you're simply talking about the approved digest amount.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's the taxable value of the parcels that are inside the TAD in 2020.
Okay.
That's what's called the base amount.
Mhm.
Dollars, all the taxes paid on those dollars continue to flow to you, the county, and the schools. It's only when we go above that number. That number right now is 24.4 million, somewhere around there. So once you get 25 million, you have increment, right? That you of that number.
Gotcha.
Can you also please provide us, or at least to Ms. McDuffie, your presentation?
Yes, absolutely.
The TAD presentation that you provided to us this evening. I thought that was helpful too. You know, you were just, it's been a few years, obviously, so we're a little bit rusty on it, but we need to get moving forward with all this.
Right.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Commissioner Martin. And let me ask for this further as well. Travis gave an example. Can he put that example in a written example? Because I need to put my visual on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. So I can see how it plays out exactly visually. Thank you.
Ken, can you hear me? I can't tell
Yes,
if
I
I'm
can.
muted. Okay. Somewhere I remember that most TADs sunset after 10 years. Is that true? I'm trying to go back through the haze of.
No, actually, you have 25 years. The TAD's life expectancy is, by law, can't exceed 30 years, I believe.
Okay.
However, your comment is correct. What we see in most cities is the action all takes place in the first 10 years, and then sometimes they will sunset them after that, because basically they get all the redevelopment they're expecting in about a 10, 12-year period, and then they'll just fade them out. They don't.
Okay.
City of Atlanta just did that on the East Side TAD, or is about to do that. And we just did one in East Point. East Point had a TAD, 25-year TAD. They closed it down after the 11th year. They got everything done and basically did it. So it may be that as you get experience with it, you'll probably get a burst of projects, and then it'll kind of slow down. At that point, you might say, okay, we're done.
And then after that period has played itself out, you can always come back around and redesignate another TAD district, another TAD area
Yeah, you have
as needed.
the state law requires that no more than 10% of your total tax digest can be in all TADs. You can have as many TADs you want, but when you add them up, they can't be more than 10% of the digest. And right now you're at about 8.5, I think, close to 9%. So you have a little room left. You could actually create an additional TAD. But you know that the digest keeps growing. So over time, that number grows over time. And you know, we actually had a case in Atlanta where it got to the 10%, but then Atlanta grew so much the next 10 years, they had an additional increment. They could add additional TADs. But the
Additional area. Okay.
then
Yeah.
to try to control the program, they prudently said we're only going to allow 10% as the maximum. Now, if you
Okay, so you probably would say that.
you're
I'm
back
sorry.
to zero, you start all over.
You would say the best strategic way to attack it when you're looking at TADs and how you're going to deal with them is to strategically look at the areas of growth or the areas of undergrowth that may be that would be
Undergrowth, but you don't want areas that are totally devoid of activity. What we found is that TAD is kind of a modest incentive. If you look at incentives, it won't turn around an area that's completely bombed out, that has no investment occurring. because it only affects about 10 to 15% of the development costs. So an area that's absolutely blighted and just terrible, TAD's probably not a strong enough tool. What you want is areas that have potential to turn around and starting to see some benefit, where that extra 10, 15% is the difference that really lets the project go. It's what makes the economics work. That's where it seems to have the greatest benefit.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I interject? We have another presentation, so we need to move along. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me, Ken?
Yes, I can.
This is Johnny Cason. It's on page 2 in these procedures, what the proposed makeup of the TAD.
Yeah, we suggest
Development
you have
Department.
flexibility as to who you would like on it.
And then it says that you're to form a 5-member TAD advisory committee consisting of 3 city appointees, the director, the city manager, city finance director, and 2 private sector appointees. So it's in here.
That's what we're recommending. Yes.
Yes, yes. And that's
You
what
can modify that, but that was the recommendation.
yes.
Also, can we use our URA to be that commission, that group to vet this for us as well?
It's basically up to the city. It's your call. There's no set state policy, say, on advisory committees. It's really what you at the city are comfortable with, that those are the appropriate people you want to vet this. That's really what the key.
It says here in the 2 private sector appointees, so they could probably come from the URA.
Yeah, I think that would be a mix, because I still would recommend that we have staff represented on that committee.
Yeah. It's a good
Okay,
idea.
everybody. Hey, what, Ken? I hope you're down to your last. Can you close for me, and
Thank
then
you.
we can come back circle around back to you.
Yeah, no, I'm finished. That was our last slide. So please proceed.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. It seems like we still have some more questions concerning that. So I'm gonna ask Naomi to put you down again, so you can come back and as we go through all of this. Well, I'll tell you what. It seems that we have some issues on this as well on our meeting coming up. But basically, I think the commissioners would like to get a copy of your presentation so they can digest a little bit more into this as well.
I'd be glad to do that and look forward to a further discussion.
All right, thank you. Thank you again for bringing it to us. Okay, we're gonna move right along, commissioners, because we have another presentation, really an update. This is update number 2, Robert Brown, Senior Water Resources Engineer and Brunswick Office Manager from Goodwin, Myers and Kaywood, Inc., to provide Shoreline Task Force update. Mr. Brown, are you on board?
Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can, sir.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that introduction, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for having me in, commissioners. Let me share my screen real quick.
Sure.
I'm excited to be here to give you an update on the Glynn County Shoreline Protection Plan. My name is Rob Brown. I'm an engineer with Goodwin Mills and Kaywood. We do a lot of work in resiliency planning, stormwater planning, watershed planning. My main background and focus is stormwater and resiliency work. But we're just here to give you an update on the second phase of the Glynn Shoreline Plan, sea level rise response plan. Just quick acknowledgement, this grant for this project was funded from a grant from Georgia DNR Coastal Resources Division and NOAA. To acknowledge that. Before we get into the update, I just wanted to give a quick refresher of just general project background and summary from phase 1. I was here about a year ago and gave the update from as we wrapped up phase 1. So just a refresher on that. So following back-to-back hurricane impacts of Matthew and Irma in 16 and 17, Glynn County worked with the city and Jekyll Island Authority to pursue a grant application to develop a shoreline protection plan such that the county and local jurisdictions could make plans to protect and stabilize some vulnerable areas so that when a future storm comes, there's a little bit more protection in place to help limit some of the impacts that would happen. So it's best to do the planning during sunny days. So they had gotten this grant in place, and the grant started up in the fall of 2018. So Glynn County was the grantee on the project, and the city and Jekyll Island Authority were project partners. They served on a task force, a Shoreline task force, with local staff. Other task force members included staff from Joint Water Sewer Commission, as well as Georgia DNR Coastal Resources Division. My company, Goodwin Mills and Kaywood, was selected as the consultant to facilitate this process and plan development. So the first phase was a shoreline assessment and implementation plan that's really focused on erosion and vulnerable areas. With the word shoreline, it didn't restrict itself to only oceanfront shorelines and beaches, but the whole plan incorporated countywide all the marshes and river shorelines as well. So we gathered a lot of existing data sets from GIS departments and other online mapping sources, as well as conducted field visits with staff and had an event to get some feedback from the public on some vulnerable shoreline areas for erosion and encroachment. So we looked at all that data and information to evaluate where the exposures were, and then prioritized where it was most vulnerable, and then started to develop a list of projects that could help protect these areas from future storms and to come up with preventative measures and various solutions toward them. There's a lot of emphasis placed on nature-based solutions like living shorelines and green infrastructure, as opposed to just only strictly hard armoring, but that was also a measure that was incorporated because sometimes those types of measures are needed. The project wrapped up in the fall of 2020, and this was one of the main outputs from the project, a list of about 68 projects across the county from the different jurisdictions. And with each of the points, we had ranked them based off of vulnerabilities, type of infrastructure impacted, and a number of other items. And with that, we had prioritized the projects in terms of the ones that need more near-term urgent action versus ones to consider for more long-term planning. But overall, there were 16 projects identified within the city limits. And by developing a very comprehensive plan like this enables the city, the county, and Jekyll to apply for grants to help promote or to help pursue design and implementation of the recommended project. So really to get a plan in place, and then to help by prioritizing these projects, it'll allow for pursuit of grant funds and other funding opportunities to help to address the issues. So now into the bulk of the presentation, shifting into the update for phase 2 of this project. So the second phase of this grant and project was a sea level rise response and implementation plan. Highlight the major objectives for this project. The first was to analyze recent sea level rise changes over the past couple years and couple decades to see how it's been changing historically, and then what more recent trends are showing and comparing them to the current projections of sea level rise. And then we examined how sea level rise will impact different areas of the city and the county, and impacting different types of infrastructure, roadways, as well as critical facilities. So a critical facility assessment was a major component of this project. We inventoried all the critical facilities and identified ones that will either need to be relocated or to consider for having upgrades in the future. And the last component was to develop a public education and outreach component to inform local residents and officials of the vulnerabilities of sea level rise in the county. We just recently wrapped up this project in September and finalized the plan. So over the past year, we had quarterly task force meetings with the local staff from the city, county, and Jekyll Island Authority, and moved our way through this sea level rise response plan development. This graphic here shows the local relative sea level at the Fort Pulaski tide gauge. near Tybee Island. The black line is that sea level rise since 1960. The units here are in meters, so it's a very small amount. But you can see once it gets to year 2000, this is where we get into the different projection levels of sea level rise that are currently projected from NOAA. The ones that are red and purple, those have very, very low probabilities of occurrence. The blues have much higher probability of occurrence. But really, we're looking at the black line and seeing where it was lining up with the various projections of sea level rise. This current data set from one of the NOAA and USGS data sites only went out to 2017. So when we add in the most recent 3 years, we see a slight uptick again at the end of this decade, which was kind of matching the middle point of the decade. So if we had overlaid those points to extend the black line, it would get to the point where it's really closely matching up with the intermediate scenario of sea level rise. So with that, if it would continue with the intermediate scenario, it could get upwards of about 4 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100. Go back to this slide. But overall, just wanted to point out some caution is that there's very small separation between these lines at the early phase between 2000 and 2020. So each of these individual lines here is 0.05 meters or it's 2 inches. So there's very small separation there. So it could easily shift upward or downward one of these scenarios. So it'll be something that as the years progress, it'll more closely track to one of these scenarios, but the current rate of rise is matching up most closely with that intermediate scenario. So that's more so the recommended one to pursue in terms of current planning processes. And also another thing to point out from this previous slide is that the rate of growth from the various projections, from the blue ones, it's more of a linear trend, but the other ones is a little bit more of an exponential trend. So it's rising faster and rising quicker with the future years. So that's something we saw with the historical data set from Fort Pulaski, as well as, because that's the most common data set used with coastal Georgia, but there's this Mayport, Florida, which is just east of Jacksonville, another tide gauge station with long-term records. But for both of these data sets, looking at the previous 80 years and splitting it up into two 50-year segments, we see a much steeper line for the most recent 40 years than the initial one. So this table corresponds to what that growth rate is in terms of rising seas, in terms of feet per 100 years. But with both of them, it was increasing at about a rate of 1.5 feet per 100 years, where it was about half or a third of that in the previous 40. So that kind of is showing that we're seeing more of the exponential growth than just a linear trend. One component that I had mentioned that was a major aspect of this project was a critical facility inventory and assessment. So with the county's hazard mitigation plan, sea level rise is not included as one of the hazards in that plan. So we're able to do a more thorough assessment as part of this project to help inform those resources and update them. So we assess all the critical facilities, including major water and sewer infrastructure, fire stations, medical care facilities, police stations, and schools for flood zone, which category of storm surge it would be impacted by, as well as if the 1 through 6 foot sea level rise scenario would be impacting it as well. So the report was summarized with the results by jurisdiction to make it a little bit easier for interpreting how the results will impact an individual jurisdiction instead of looking at it across them. So we focused the Glynn County ones in one subset, the Brunswick in another, just for ease of using that document. So you all are probably the most interested in the assessment results from City of Brunswick. So I'll just review a couple of the critical facility assessment summary key points. This graphic here, this picture, it overlays all the critical facilities with storm surge. So the light blue is areas impacted by a category 1 storm surge. The dark blue is a 2, and the yellow is a category 3. So where most of the critical facilities are in the city, along the Gloucester and Mansfield hubs. It's most vulnerable area in terms of storm surge and sea level rise across the whole county. So it's in one of the more vulnerable areas. So the recommendation is for any of the historical structures to try and implement measures to flood-proof them. And then if there's any future plans of major upgrades at one of these facilities, to potentially try and relocate them to one of the higher ground areas within the city. So not anything that needs immediate urgent action, but just as there's future long-term plans for upgrades to consider potentially incorporating them in other parts that have a higher elevation and would be less vulnerable to storm surge. There are also several major roadways that were vulnerable to sea level rise. There was one that was impacted at 2 feet, but then there were a couple that started to be impacted by a 3-foot sea level rise scenario. So the recommendation is to focus on first the 2-foot one, but then segments with 3 foot of sea level rise. But if there's any adjacent segments having 4-foot sea level rise impacted, it might be good to kind of just do that whole segment of road all at once. Unfortunately, most of these roads are state highways, so will require coordination with DOT. And on this slide, this highlights the summary of the roadway vulnerability assessment for the city of Brunswick. And the picture here shows the city overlaid with a 3-foot sea level rise scenario with in the greenish color, and then the blue is 4-foot sea level rise. So for our major roadway assessment, major, we included state highways, and then from the Glynn County GIS roads layer, we included arterial and connector streets, and that's just their classification for the more major roads. So this would be something like L Street or Altama or MLK Boulevard, those type of major roads. So in reviewing the areas that were impacted by the 3-foot sea level rise scenario, the big ones were along Highway 17 by the Tourist Causeway intersection, as well as adjacent to Overlook Park near Gloucester. And then Highway 17, K Street near Highway 17 was another area impacted. As well as 4th Avenue, as it just turns to the north on Newcastle. And then lastly, I mentioned one area that was impacted with 2 foot of sea level rise scenario, and that was the Riverside Drive Causeway. And this was the only major roadway impacted at the 2-foot scenario. There are several local roads that are impacted by those smaller scenarios as well. One component was to create an education outreach tool to summarize all the results from both first and second phase of this project. So we had worked with the Glynn County GIS department to create an ArcGIS story map. There's a link here on this site, but then the story map is available from the Glynn County's website as well on their EMA page, as well as their GIS page. And it's right near where their hazard mitigation plan and disaster recovery redevelopment plans are. But this story map is a way to kind of click through some brief summaries of the project and results, as well as photos. The second tab here is Shoreline and Resiliency mapping. So showing some important maps associated with areas where there's erosion in the shorelines, flood zones, storm surge zones, where there's high tide flooding area located. The sea level rise tab kind of goes through a very brief general description of sea level rise impacts and frequency and probability of the various scenarios. But then there's also this side-by-side map so that you can compare current high tides scenario versus an adjacent map that shows what area is going to be impacted at a 3-foot sea level rise scenario. There's a tab that goes through about 15 different management measures that were identified as ways to address some of the shoreline erosion areas. The county incorporated a couple of their drone videos of flooding and high tide events, as well as their high water model from the areas that were impacted by Hurricane Irma. There's another tab with some links to some other important resources. And this final tab is just an acknowledgement and then copies of both the phase 1 and the phase 2 plans. Another item discussed during the sea level rise study was dealing with codes and ordinances. And I'm just going to highlight one of them, and that is associated with freeboard. So freeboard is the number of feet above the base flood elevation, or where there's the 100-year flood zone, is sometimes referred to as the AE flood zone. This is an area that has a 1% chance of flooding on any given year, commonly the 100-year storm. But basically, adding freeboard will increase the height of a structure above that flood zone, and thus simply creates a margin of safety to protect against more severe storms or the increasing flood risks associated with rising sea levels and sea level rise. So the city currently has a 1-foot freeboard in their ordinance. But freeboard is an item that's very important to the community rating system. So this is through FEMA's National Floodplain Insurance Program, where if you do the bare minimum, you have a community rating system score of a 10. But as you go above and beyond the minimum standards, you get additional benefits towards reductions in flood insurance for residents. So the city of Brunswick has moved from a class 7, or sorry, they were most recently a class 9 up until a year ago, and then they moved down to a class 6. So this enables city residents to get a 20% reduction on their flood insurance. So each class you go down, you get an additional 5% reduction in flood insurance. So with that last jump from a class 9 to a class 6, the flood insurance reductions went from 5% credit to now a 20% credit. Glynn County and Jekyll Island Authority, they're both a class 5, so they get 25% reduction in their flood insurance premiums for their local residents. So freeboard's an item that just gets a very high number of points in the CRS system. Here's a table for the number of points you get for the various levels of freeboard. And to put these numbers into perspective, 500 points equates moving down 1 whole class. So there's a lot of points to be gained from moving from 1 to 2 to 3 feet. So just wanted to highlight that benefit and why this item was discussed as part of the sea level rise plan. So just in wrapping things up, just some key outcomes from the sea level rise response plan. First, we had reviewed historical and recent sea level rise changes and future projections to come up with a recommendation for which sea level rise scenario to consider for future projects and work. Reviewed and assessed the critical facilities. And then the Glynn County Board of Commissioners, they heard an update of this plan in September, and then were presented again in October. And as part of that update, they had adopted this plan as an appendix to their disaster recovery and redevelopment plan, because they wanted to really enhance that document. There's some mention of sea level rise, but there was not this level of in-depth analysis. So they wanted to incorporate that with that document. We'd also provided the public with relevant data sources on sea level rise and this project through that ArcGIS story map, and then presented the task force with several codes and ordinances that could be used to increase resiliency, specifically that freeboard item. With that, thank you very much for your time this evening, and open it up if you all have any questions.
Thank you, sir, for giving us the presentation. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to send you our questions if we do have some.
Okay.
We are running just a tad bit late on our presentation. So, but I appreciate you giving us this update. Commissioners understand the fact that sea level rise is not necessarily always coming from the ocean, which we are sitting on the ocean, but also our lakes, our rivers, and our tributaries as well, marshes. So that's something that we here on the coast have to always be concerned about. But again, if we have any questions, we will get with Mr. Brown, send our questions to him as he has left his email contact and also his office phone number, so we can get in contact with him. Mr. Brown, I thank you so much for your presentation this evening, and be looking to hear from us very shortly.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Okay, Commissioners, we have come to the end of our printed agenda for our work session. It has caused us to really get some good information, and also it spurred some questions as well, I'm sure. However, we will move forward and we will get those questions to the appropriate individuals as we can move forward and get the answers that we need moving forward. So with that, I'd like to close out our work session, and I'd like to immediately go into our city commission meeting. So I'd like to call to order the city commission meeting dated Wednesday, November the 17th. We will rise for an invocation led by Commissioner Vincent Williams, and also we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by myself. So we please rise.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this great day, and we thank you for this beautiful city in which we live. As we come now to do the business of this city, we ask that you grant us wisdom, that you grant us knowledge and understanding, and that you will just continue to bless our hearts and bless our city. Father, even as the trial that is going on in our city and all the attention that we're getting from throughout the world, we pray that we will be an example to the world, that they will know that peace and harmony still exists among all mankind. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all who have come to be with us, the ones who are online and also the ones who are in the building here for our city council meeting. I would like to state that this is a hybrid meeting where Commissioner Williams is in the building with me, sitting alongside me, and also our other three commissioners, Commissioner Julie Martin and Commissioner Johnny Cason and Mayor Pro Tem Felicia Harris are with us virtually. So before we start, Madam Clerk, are there anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes, Mayor, Beverly Tyson.
Is she on board? Because she's not in the building.
She's not. No, I don't see her in chat. No.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, maybe she will show up before the end of the meeting, and if we have enough time, I'll give her opportunity to address this council. All right, so let's move right along. First of all, are there any addition or to be added to our agenda? Hearing none, then we'll move right ahead. First item on our agenda is a public hearing, annexation ordinance of property pursuant to the petition of Viper of Brunswick, LLC. Mr. John Hunter, our planning and codes director, is presenting.
Thank you. I knew I'm not gonna be able to do it. Brian, do you mind? I've totally lost my voice.
I'm sorry.
It's not gonna come back.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Can everybody hear me? Online?
Yes.
Okay. What you have before you, the public hearing tonight, sorry, I'm about to go back and review the agenda, but if you recall in our last commission meeting, we held a public hearing related to property that's being annexed in on Trout Drive. The public hearing tonight is for the annexation to have any public comments related to bringing that in, and then you will have a final vote on the ordinance, which is item number 2. If there's a vote to adopt that ordinance later on in this meeting, there will also be a vote to rezone the property. I believe that is item number 4. And that is the order in which they need to go. You must first have the public hearing where we will open it up to any comments related to the annexation of the property. The law then requires the city to adopt an ordinance. The ordinance does not go on the books, but it is an ordinance that is maintained in the city clerk's office. We've done these similar in similar situations, but I believe the last one was maybe the gas station on Highway 17. And then afterwards, after the annexation is approved, the city can then take a vote to rezone the property.
Okay, so this is ordinance 1073.
That's correct, but right now we're only at the public hearing stage, so it would need to be opened for anyone speaking in favor
Sure.
or against the
I
annexation.
understand, sir.
Sorry, yes,
No problem.
1073.
Okay, commissioners, this ordinance was presented in our package. Since this is a public, well, first of all, are there any questions? Any questions on our process of what we have to do as outlined by our city attorney, Mr. Brian Corey? Now, okay, this is a public hearing. I open up for a public hearing. This hearing is to hear from our public for anyone for or against the granting of the approval of this annexation ordinance number 1073. If it's so, are you in the audience here tonight? Please step forward, state your name and your address, and you have 2 minutes to give your comments. Not seeing anyone come forward for comments. Madam Clerk, are there anyone in the chat room who so state as they want to provide comments?
No one in chat, Mayor.
Okay, since there's no one here to present any comments for or against, and no one in the chat room to present any comments for or against, I now declare this public hearing closed. So commissioners, as stated by our city attorney about having to do this annexation and also where it is filed and kept, so forth. Are there any questions that you have before I ask for a motion? No questions, then I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we approve ordinance number 1073 for the annexation of property pursuant to the petition of Viper. Is that Viper?
Viper Brunswick.
Viper.
Second.
Okay, it's been probably motion second for the approval of annexation ordinance number 1073, which is a petition of Viper Brunswick LLC. Are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Hearing nothing from the opposers, I believe the ayes have it, and that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move right along to item number 2, city attorney item. Consider adoption of ordinance number 1073, annexation. Well, we voted, we was in the public hearing. First of all, we had to do that. Am I right or wrong?
No, there wasn't a vote necessary for the public hearing.
Okay.
Sorry, there wasn't a vote necessary for the.
You're right. We have voted upon the adoption of the ordinance number 1073.
I thought that was the motion that was made.
It was.
All right, good deal.
Well, keep me straight, Mr. City Attorney.
No problem.
Keep me straight. Okay, item number 3. Consider approval of November 3rd, 2021 regular scheduled meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 3rd, 2021 regular schedule meeting.
Second.
Motion second for the approval of November 3rd, 2021 regular scheduled meeting minutes. Further discussion or comments? All in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposers have the same right. Hearing none from the opposers, that motion carries. Thank you. All right, item number 4, consider approval of rezoning petition number 21-04 from Viper Brunswick LLC owner petitioning to rezone the subject parcel from R9 single family to R9 to office commercial OC. Mr. John Hunter, are you gonna present or Mr. Corey's gonna present?
I'll do my best to fill in on this one as well.
Okay.
luckily, even though John is out for the count tonight, I think we all had the benefit of a rather detailed staff report at the last commission meeting. This is again related to the property that was just annexed into the city of Brunswick on Trout Street, if I want to call it Turtle Street. It's on Trout Street. It was a piece of property that was designated R9. It had been properly advertised, properly noticed to the county, no objections related to the new zoning classification that the applicant is seeking now. If you look in your packet, and I think John explained it last time, it's a piece of property that is contiguous to the city limits, and it is adjacent to the Jack's Spine Center property. It's a medical office. They are seeking to expand their parking. They're required to put in a vegetative buffer between the new parking area and the previously, the currently what would now be zoned R9. I don't believe we had any comments regarding the rezoning, and is now before you for a vote. Sorry, I think that's my.
Are you finished?
I think I'm causing the feedback, so I apologize, but it is essentially here now that the annexation vote must take place first, obviously public hearing, then annexation vote. And now the only remaining item is the rezoning. And that is what is before you at this moment.
Okay, thank you, sir. As commissioners, this item is before us. We just approved the annexation into the city. So now they're coming to us to petition the rezoning of this property from R9 single family to office commercial, and it's basically for added parking. As you see from our package, that we have staff approval. So are there any questions or comments that you have?
I'll make a motion to approve petition number 2104 from Viper Brunswick LLC.
Okay, I got a motion. Do I have a second? This is a rezoning petition.
I want to make sure, okay, because Commissioner Casey didn't say for rezoning or from R9 to OC. So he just said.
If I heard correctly, I believe he said approval of the application. I think that would
I
substantiate.
think that would cover it, Commissioner.
Yes, I believe so.
Well, that covers it. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, commissioners, I got a motion, I got a second for approval of this petition, which is the rezoning petition number 21-04 to move from R9 to OC. Are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
There any opposers? Hearing none, I believe the ayes have it and that motion carries. Thank you. All right, we are at item number 5 on our agenda. Consider approval of 14 alcohol license renewals. Our Deputy Marshal, Ms. Mundy, is presenting.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, I do have 14 businesses to report on regarding their alcohol licensing permits and renewals. These permits vary from beer, wine, and distilled spirits. 13 of these businesses have complied with the required paperwork, fingerprinting, and background investigations on managers and owners with no violations on record, preventing them from possessing an alcohol license. However, we do have one business that is in this renewal pact that has recently been in violation for underage sales, which is Snappy's. This is their first violation since they have opened last year. The final business that hasn't filed for renewal is Fountain Package. They have not received a violation for underage sales. They were last tested in 2018. Both businesses found in violation of underage sales were given certified letters to appear here tonight and are scheduled for court date of January the 5th of 2022.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Marshal Monday for that. Commissioners, as you look to see here, we have a number of renewals, and as Deputy Marshal said, there is one on here for sure that has some issues. And the issue that she stated, and also they will be coming before municipal court.
Yes, both businesses are scheduled for January the 5th of 2022.
Okay. All right. So as you can see on our packet, the list of organizations that's applying for renewal. And we can take all of those at one time, and we can deal with the last one that has some issues with violation.
I have a quick question for Deputy Marshal Monday. Are any of these applications applying for anything different from what they've had in the past?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, let's deal with the ones that have no violations, and then we can deal with the last one that's on our list here that has violations.
What is it, 11?
There's 13.
13.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we approve the 13 renewals that we have before us that don't have any violations, and then we move to the one that's here for violation.
Second.
Motion second for this commission to approve the alcohol beverage license renewal for 13 organizations that's been presented to us here. They are the ones that are without violations. Are there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, no opposed, that motion carries for the 13 that's been presented. Thank you. Also, now, Ms. Monday, will you please reiterate exactly what's going on with Snappy Food Mart?
Yes, sir. We actually have Snappy Food Mart who has applied for renewal. They opened last year as a new business. This has been their first violation of underage sales. We also have Fountain Package, which the owners are here tonight for, but they're not on the renewal list.
Okay.
There is the separate, these were the two businesses that were found in violation of their testing, October of 25th. But Snappy's is the one that's up for renewal
Tonight.
tonight.
Okay. And they are not here.
No, this
No,
is
that's Fountain.
Package. Yes, that's Fountain Package.
Okay. So has Fountain applied for renewal?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. They just here listening in.
Yes, and
Okay.
I'm just informing the commission that they have an underage sale.
These gentlemen are from Snappy's.
No.
No, Fountain. Yes. Yeah, Fountain Pack. You Snappy's or Fountain? Snappy's. Oh, I do apologize, Commissioner. I asked them if they were with Fountain Package downstairs, and
Okay, so
They
they are
misunderstood
here.
me.
So
Snappy's is here.
Food Mart
Fountain.
is here.
Yes,
The owner is Velma Ben Trivedi.
Trivedi.
Trivedi. Okay. And they are located at 2905 Glen Avenue.
Yes,
And they are here for a retail sale of beer and wine.
yes.
Okay.
And they were just, like I said, found in just violation. This is their first offense.
Can you go over what we have done in?
Deputy Marshal Monday came to me after it was October
25th.
the check in October 25th, and she said there had been two businesses found to be in violation. And in the past, the commission has asked that they be brought, to the commission to be addressed. And then if there was necessity, or at least informed that the meeting in which their violations would be discussed, that they could come and present if they wish and address the commission. So we sent out in the past, as we've done, we sent out the certified letters notifying the owners that it would be something that would be discussed at this commission meeting. In the past, when it is a first-time offense coming back for renewal, sorry. The first offense, the licensee shall be assessed a $150 fine and receive a period of probation of 6 months. Those were the new, we added, if you guys recall, under the violations of these code of ordinances, because we felt that it would be best to have something defined in the code. When we made our new amendment in 2018, we added these 3-tiered steps for these types of violations. The first being $150 fine and 6 months probation. The second, which is not applicable to Snappies, is a $300 fine and 6 months probation. The third, $750 fine, 12 months probation. In the past, before we had specifically defined this in the code, I believe the commission regularly placed licenses or alcohol licensees on probation for a period of time that was, subject to the discretion and discussion. But I think this might be the first go around in this newly defined structure. So that is what the code sets forth. And I'll leave it up to the commission.
Okay. So is this in addition to when they go for municipal court?
I actually think these might be in state court.
State court, okay.
Correct. So this is a separate issue entirely.
Understand. All right.
From what our ordinance says, it's $150 fine,
That's right.
6 month probation.
That's correct.
If any violations happen within that time, then there's a suspension or a
Yes,
whatever.
they would be brought back forth before this commission for sanctions hearing, in which you could assess an additional penalty up to revocation, termination, essentially.
Okay. Before commissioners, other commissioners, do you have any comments?
I do. Are the owners of this location owners of another location? Because I was kind of confused. I thought they were answering that they were both with Snappy as well as with Fountain.
No, Snappy Food
Okay.
Mart is a standalone. Fountain Package is a different,
Owner?
yes.
Okay, so have there been violations at this location before?
No, this is, they just started their business last year.
Okay, so they just started at this location.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm asking about the location period. So the location had been in existence until last year.
Right. It was a complete different store. It's located on 17 right next to
Subway.
yeah, Subway. Mhm.
Oh, okay, that's totally, okay.
All right, any further questions? Well, Commissioner Williams stated, and also our city attorney stated the guideline or the sanctions that we place on violators who violate this. Now, this is very important. A lot of folks say, well, it doesn't make a difference. No, this is very important. And we establish our guidelines and our sanctions for violators that violate this policy. Granted, the city has total authority to grant grant alcohol beverage license. So therefore, we need to regulate it and make sure that that we do the right thing for that. So we went through a process of setting up our ordinance with this, and therefore our ordinance stated, as what our attorney and also Commissioner Williams reiterated as well. So commissioners, if there's anything different from that, please let me know, and I entertain a motion to whatever we need to do.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we assess the $150 fine, 6 months probation. Make sure that Officer Monday, if you would, explain to the riders that if at any point in time that they're caught violating this ordinance again, that there will be other
Precautions.
and
Does this also
may
apply
not
to
be-
Fountain
may not
Package?
be- May not be this flexible.
They haven't applied yet.
Right. So it's
when they apply, we could do the same.
at that time. Okay.
So I don't know, the commission may not be this flexible on the next go around. They may say, hey, you can take the license, or suspend the license. So
Yeah.
please, sir, I'm saying to you, make sure that you.
We are so research. Sale is the law, was the law, is the first one. And the trainee employee, that's why he don't know about that. And by mistake, I am not there that time. And he's doing that, that's problem.
Yeah. Well, any employees that you have, make sure you let them know. That's the first thing you let them know.
No, 100%.
Put it in writing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I got a motion, and do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, probably motion second for us to administer the sanctions that has outlined in our ordinance concerning alcohol beverage license violations. Are there any further questions or comments? Commissioner Williams, thank you for allowing or telling the owner exactly, you know, where we are and how we administer this and what does transpire and happen. So that's thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposes. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner. Deputy Marshal, please adhere to what Commissioner Williams stated and let individuals know exactly where we are and what the ramifications of this sanction concerning this violation that was done concerning alcohol beverage license.
Yes, sir, will do.
Do we now have to approve their renewal?
Yes, and they're given a copy of the,
Okay, so I entertain the motion to approve the renewal subject to, excuse me?
You have to consider their renewal. You don't
Yeah,
necessarily
I
have to.
approve it.
Yeah, consider the approval. Yeah.
Please consider approval of their renewal, please.
But with the stated,
Yes, with the
Yeah.
stated sanction.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion to approve
Consider approval.
consider the approval of the renewal of Snappy Food Mart's beer and wine license with the 6-month probation as forestated.
and $150 fine.
And the $150 fine.
Second.
I have a second, I have a motion to have a second to consider the approval of renewal of the alcohol beverage license for Snappy Food Mart, along with the sanctions that has been stated. Are there any further questions? All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? No opposers, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mundy,
Have a good evening.
Deputy Marshal, appreciate it. Okay, let's move right along pretty quickly here, Commissioners. Item number 6, consider approval of the submittal of the joint 2017 Community Development Block Grant, Disaster Relief from Glenn County. Ms. McDuffie and also Ms. Monica Harden is presenting, seems to me.
Good evening. This has been, a long time coming, and we certainly just want to inform the commission and also get approval to move forward expeditiously. This is the community block grant that we applied for earlier in the year, but was not given, was not awarded. So DCA did go back and review the grant process and did offer $16.5 million to the most distressed areas, which included the 31520 zip code. So we are now not in competition for the money, but they are going to allocate funding for these projects, but the amount of the allocation is based on how much is requested from our jurisdiction as well as the 2 other jurisdictions who have eligibility for these funds. The city is going to submit a project, which will be, as we have done in the past, a joint grant project between the city and county. We are requesting that the county be the lead agency again on this project. and that the grant be submitted for all 4 phases of the College Park project. And that's a little bit different. The first time we submitted it was only for phase 1. And so now we are asking for all 4 phases to be funded through this process. And in the packet, it goes through information about the 4 phases of the project. The first being, of course, the outfall at the county. And then we move into other areas of the project as is outlined through the design process that was done by EMC back in 2018. So right now we are asking for approval of the joint application to be submitted to DCA. The grant date is actually, the deadline for the grant is January 14th of 2022, but we are trying to get the grant in early so that DCA can move forward with their review and we can expedite getting the funding allocated to the city so that we can start moving forward in early spring, hopefully, of next year to start with the work at College Park. The budget for the grant is being revised as well, because in order to include all 4 phases, we think, well, the last number we have in this information is $12 million, but we were on a call a couple of days ago with the engineers, and because of pricing increases, they are still working to solidify a good grant number. So it may be a little bit more than the 12 million, but we basically are asking for the resolution to submit the grant to be approved. And we will put in a budget and certainly inform the commission of what that final budget number is. The city has allocated funding and the county in the past to support the project. And at this point, we are putting in approximately $700,000 of funding. And we do have that funding designated in our ARPA funds. So we can put that money in as a local match from the city, and the county is doing the same. Again, this is to get the College Park project moving forward, and I'll allow Monica to make comment if she has additional comments.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioners? This is a long time coming. This is something we've been trying to get done for a number of years, ever since I've been on this commission, to get something done for College Park. And it seems like we're almost here. Ms. Monica Harden, are you available online as well?
Can I
yes,
ask a quick question? And
Yes.
I don't know if Monica Harden could answer this or if Ms. McDuffie can, but if the total amount available is 16.5 million and we're projecting a project or submitting a project with a cost of 12 million, are we leaving 4.5 million on the table? I mean,
No, actually, we're asking for more than our share. Because that 16.5 million is for 3 jurisdictions to request.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. And I know that, most of us have been at this long enough. We know if you've got shovel-ready projects and you've already gone through the process of the studies and the evaluations and a cost estimate, and you're pretty much shovel-ready, you're in a good position. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get ahead of the game, because we want our application to be in first. We want our application to get the most consideration, and we hope to, obtain the higher level of funding than the other jurisdictions, certainly.
I think the staff and everybody involved has done a very good job in order to pull all of this together. And I feel like we're in a good position to be able to attain, hopefully, what we're asking for. Thank you.
And we certainly thank Monica too for her endeavors.
Yes, Monica has been she's been the one who's steadfast with this project. And we are, meeting regularly. Monica, you have any further comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Just to say that we have been very thorough when it comes to DCA's comments on the first application that was denied. So every time that we meet with the engineers and with anyone who's been involved, we address specifically not just the overall grant application of where we are in the narrative, but specifically the items that DCA identified that were either lacking or weak in our first application. So we are doing our very best, and this is due, like Ms. McDuffie indicated, January the 14th. We do want to submit early, but we want to get some solid numbers specifically because this needs to cover all 4 phases. So when we go to construction, we have enough to complete the project. So just thank you to everyone who's been involved, Garrow and Ms. McDuffie, just for always being available. And we hope to come back to you pretty soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a part. Thank you to the county as well, because this is a joint venture here. We're trying to get things done. It's going to benefit both the city and the county as well.
Yeah, we appreciate everything everybody has done and been steadfast in sticking to.
Right. So with all that, Commissioner, I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we approve resolution 2021-16, resolution between the city of Brunswick and Glenn County to submit an application to obtain the 2017 Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief Fund.
Second.
Been motion and second for approval of submittal of our joint 2017 Community Development Block Grant for relief of funds, excuse me. Are there any further questions or comments? This is gonna significantly help College Park. We really gonna see the benefit of this. Commissioners who have been with us for 8 years now, you guys have, we know what this is gonna do. All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye.
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 Are any opposers? I think not. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Ms. Harden. Thank you so much, Ms. McDuffie. Thank you so much, commissioners. Thank you so much, Glenn County, and also the city of Brunswick. All right. Let's move right ahead. Item number 7, consider approval of request for a proposal for waste collection services. Ms. McDuffie, our city manager, presenting again.
Good evening again. This is for, as you know, we did a RFP earlier in the year to solicit waste collection services for our waste collection, our recycling, our yard waste, and our bulk pickup. We received 2 submissions from that RFP process. One was from Waste Pro, the other one was from Republic Services, who is our current vendor. After full evaluation of both proposals, we are recommending that we continue with Republic Services of Georgia, and that we renegotiate our contract agreement with them going forward. We have already extended our current contract to April 2022. So the new contract will be put in place as of April of next year. We will, renegotiate the terms of the contract. The information that you received in your packet has the proposed prices that were submitted by Republic, and they were, slightly increased, but there was no real substantial increases in the pricing. What we do want to look at is our recycling. The waste collection will virtually stay the same. We will do, education campaign on the waste collection services and moving forward, but basically the waste collection will stay the same. One of the questions that I proposed to the vendor during our talks with them was if they could GPS the addresses of the area for the city of Brunswick, but they said that they are not currently using that type of technology for residential areas. But I have asked them to, if that comes about, then that we are given an opportunity to consider that particular innovation. And the reason being is that we found that one of the problems that we have with our waste collection is just not having the updated information and addresses, and our just the addresses on the houses and the locations are subject. They are so inconsistent throughout the city that it causes a lot of problems when they change drivers or they redirect their routes. So we are going to continue to look at that aspect of waste collection, but the waste collection will virtually remain the same. The recycling is another aspect of our waste collection, but that particular part of it, we are asking or recommending that we go to a subscription recycling process. And what that would entail is that persons, right now, everyone has a recycling bin. And as you know, one of the problems that we encountered was that the people who don't recycle, they just use that second bin as a trash bin. And when the recycling comes around to pick it up, then it contaminates the recycling because they put trash in it, and the person picking it up basically dumps the trash over with the recycling. So what we are suggesting is that we go to a subscription process where the recycling be done by subscription only. Basically, what we would do is a campaign for citizens to sign up for recycling going forward and give a date for that to be done. Somewhere probably March 1st would be our date of, at this point, you need to have subscribed for the recycling. And we will try and do a very heavy campaign of, the environmental benefits and all of the benefits of recycling, and encourage as many people in the city to recycle going forward. But at the date that we decide, we will pull the recycling bins and only leave ones for persons who have subscribed. And hopefully that way it would eliminate the contamination of the recycling streams. Of course, going forward, also the changes that we had implemented before in terms of what can and cannot be recycled will go forward with the new contract. That meaning that glass items would not be included in the recyclables for the city. So that would be the change that we'd make or recommend for the subscription. It would still be billed by the city, but it would be a separate item.
Regina, I
next-
think that if I may say something, I think we ought to set up someplace that folks that want to recycle glass can recycle glass. I think that's what the county has done, and I think we ought to do it for the city residents.
And that is being proposed. There will be drop-off
Good.
points for glass recycling,
Good.
but it would not be in the pickup.
Good deal.
And I think, we would definitely need to, again, educate the public and designate those sites and make sure that people know where they are, make them convenient for city residents, and make sure that, that they're, I guess, operated properly. The other items of waste collection is our yard waste. That would remain the same. That will be a weekly pickup of yard waste. And we will work with the Republic, because I did note to them that one of the things that we noticed in our illegal dumps that are picked up is that a lot of them start with the yard waste, where there's yard waste put out and then people put trash in it, and then they consider it contaminated, so they don't pick it up. So we will work to negotiate with them where they are picking up the yard waste, not only on a timely manner, but also to make sure that there's less contamination and that they don't just pass them by if they have a cup or one piece of trash or something in that yard waste pile. So we will work with them on that. The other one is the bulk pickup. The current contract, as it was renegotiated, was 1 pickup per month per household. And we will continue that particular aspect of bulk pickup. But again, we will work to make sure that the public is knowledgeable that they can call in and get the bulk pickup once a month within the cost of what they're paying for their waste collection annually. The only other thing is the illegal dumps, and that's they're proposing a slight increase on the cost of that going forward. But that's basically, we are asking for the commission to approve us to move forward with negotiating a new agreement with Republic Services for our waste collection.
Ms. McDuffie, on the
Yes.
on the recycling, that will be an additional cost to the individuals for that dumpster?
Well, right now, they had separated it out. We have it listed together, included in the residential subscription, and we'll have to work that out in terms of how we can separate that out. But yes, it has a separate cost associated with it.
Okay, so if I volunteer to recycle, then it's gonna cost me a little more per year for trash pickup.
Yeah, it's about $4 per month, I think.
Well, with that, I got a question too concerning, I know our fees that we have, a number of our residents will probably ask this question as well, since I'm not gonna do recycling and it's gonna cost me to do recycling. Shouldn't the fees be reduced?
Well, I'm going to kind of, and I will pose this question to the city attorney later. But, we are providing the service of option of recycling. And recycling is something that will help the city in its cleanliness, in our environmental protection and things like that. So I'm not sure if we can charge them for it without them participating, or charge them for having the opportunity to participate. But I would rather the bill be the same for everybody. And people who don't recycle, that's their loss. But I don't know if that's legal to do so.
I understand that, and I see where you're going, but look to field questions concerning that. I'm sure that there will be some residents who will be highly concerned about.
They're gonna want it reduced. You're right, Mayor.
Yeah.
They're gonna want their fee reduced if they don't get the recycling.
Right. So that may be something we need to look at when you negotiate with Republic as well, okay?
Yes, we will.
It's sort of a hard thing to do it this way because the mayor is right. I mean, folks have really objected to between the difference that we charge and what the county charges. What are we paying right now, Regina?
Right now, our yard waste is $20.74, and that includes everything, including recycling, bulk pickup, and yard waste.
Say that again, please.
$20.74
That's per month, right?
per month. And the waste collection, and I need to look at, let me see if I can find it right quick. They gave us that separated out, and it was about $4 different. So the amount that they gave for residential was $17 and I want to say 24 cents. And then the additional $4.70 was for recycling.
Okay, so I'm sure some of our residents gonna be.
Well, and we won't, I mean, again, we don't have to charge that. We will charge it by subscription. I guess what I would like for you all to mostly weigh in on is the process.
Oh, the process to me sounds fine.
Okay.
As long as we're not going to get calls about going up on the waste management fee. I mean, the Republic waste management fee, because we're going to get them if we go up.
I have a question about,
Hold on, Julie, let her be sure and
I'm sorry.
digest
Okay.
that, please.
Well, what I was going to say was that it's going to be, okay, currently we're at 2074 combined. Combined, it will be $21.99. So actually we went up $1.24 for the combined if people recycle. If they don't recycle, there's a possibility that we will charge $17 and some odd cents for the service without the recycling. But again, I want to promote the recycling and I want people to participate because it's what, needs to happen in order to minimize our waste streams, for us to be more environmentally conscious. So we want to encourage recycling as much as possible.
Well, it used to be that reducing what you were putting in the landfill was really a big state requirement. And I don't see where they are really and truly on top of that right now. That's not to say they're not going to come back. But I don't see where we're having any mandates to lessen our dumpage at the landfill.
Yeah, it seems
heard
like
of
it took
anything?
decades and decades to get recycling as a mainstream activity. And
that was the reason for it too, is
yeah,
to reduce the what we were throwing in the landfill.
and we've gone almost completely backwards to that now. It's just so disheartening and discouraging that it costs so much more to recycle. That just doesn't seem right somehow.
Well, China's not taking it anymore, and it's a commodity-based pricing, and the commodities that we have to recycle, it's just not in the pricing. It's not there right now. It'll come back. All commodities come back.
Okay, one of the things I need to note is that Glenn County is going by subscription as well, but they are going to allow Republic to do their billing. And I did, pose that question to the staff in terms of whether we wanted to bill it separately. We thought that would be a bigger deterrent for people if they were getting a separate bill. So we decided to continue to bill it with internally, but to offer it by subscription.
I would agree.
Yes, I think I agree with that too. I think one of the reasons why recycling kind of hit the skids was because, as you all know, Republic came to us and wanted to raise the fees and for glass recycling as well, and it was met in this whole community not so well. But here we are this evening with our process to have our city manager to negotiate our next waste collection services with our vendor that we have here. So,
And they are on the line if you all have any questions for them.
Well, I have a question about carts. In the pay structure chart, it says there's a residential additional cart fee of, for 2022 of $5.52. And then if you drop down, there's a charge for city carts at $10.65. So I'm confused as to what is the definition of a city cart and what is the definition of a residential additional cart?
Well, the residential additional cart is one that, you know, if the person has a cart and they want a second cart for their trash pickup, then that's the cost to get that additional cart, you know, located at their residence.
Okay.
The city cart, I will have to defer to either Bart or Ally on that one because I'm not sure.
You know, we did pay Republic $10 to deliver carts. That might be what the $10 is.
So if we already have a cart, I mean, we're already in the program, right? We don't have to pay that again. Is that correct?
Right. And they're not going to pick up the carts. What I have asked them to do is to make sure that the recycling carts are distinctive from the waste collection cart, and that all of the carts are either, well, they are not going to provide new carts, but they are going to make sure that the carts are in good repair and well maintained. And if they find some that are broken or wheelless or that kind of thing, that they pick them up and they replace those carts going forward for everyone.
They'll replace those without necessarily asking questions. In other words, carts get, you know, in the city, you're in a closer environment, and the cart that you wheeled out at the street may not be the one that ends up at your doorstep after they come by. And maybe you ended up with the bum wheel that your neighbor actually had. I mean, they don't, if they just replace them if they're not in good working condition, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There's no charge to the resident.
Bart or Ally, can you all answer the question about the $10 city cart?
This is Rob Carter, the municipal manager, Wood Republic. Thank y'all for having us. The city carts, that's the service for carts for the city for the garbage only. That is comparable to the 1724 rate for the residents, but because the city cart doesn't have yard waste or bulk, that's why that rate's lower.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, but that means nothing to me. Can you put it in layman's terms for a resident that lives in the city? What does that mean?
These are for city-owned carts that aren't for a residential unit. It's for the city where there's not enough room for like a commercial can, like a front load can.
Okay,
it's for something
thank you.
to pick up for the city.
Yeah.
Thank you. That
Like there's one right inside the door at City Hall there on the Rental Street side. That costs $10. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions or comments?
Do we have, I know the schedule normally is, well, in my neighborhood, the same day that my trash is collected, my yard debris is supposed to be collected. Is that going to be the standard? Is that going to change, or how is that going to work?
No, that will stay the same.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't get out my slide rule and my calculator. I'm sure some of y'all did, but the increase in costs from one year over the next, what percentage does that represent?
It's about 5%, I want to say.
Wow. Okay.
Not quite 10%,
That's pretty
but
hefty.
it's about 5% overall.
Yeah.
Now, we started with Republican 17, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, and it has gone up from there to now about how much percent?
Now, I'm not sure. I don't have the number where we started in 17. Ally, do you have that information in front of you?
No, I do not, but I can find out.
Well, it doesn't really matter. I think that part doesn't matter. But we're just saying that we know it has been going up each year a little bit, but it's in that contract that it would do that. but now we're here with a different contract with negotiations. So I think our motion is to allow you, well, on our agenda is to allow you to negotiate with these people. And we're trying to give you some guidelines as to what we would like to see in that contract.
And certainly we will bring that finalized agreement back to the commission or for you all's approval.
Is
So,
there a fuel surcharge anywhere in any of this language in the contract?
At this point, I can't attest to that, but we will certainly make
I
sure.
think I would watch that one. I think you probably have paid some fuel surcharges.
I will look to see if that's in there and how much they are.
The other company that you mentioned was Waste Pro. Was their number so astronomical that we just didn't consider that, or we just?
It was not only their cost was higher, but also just references that we checked in areas that they have been in.
Okay.
Did not give favorable comments.
Okay. I was just good information to know.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we are adequately able to express to our constituents what they're getting and the increase in the cost of what they're getting versus the historical pattern of Republic and the discontent that some of us, that includes myself, has had in the past with Republic. Because I am a city resident and I do pay for sanitation. And so when the question was asked about the increase, I think that is important. Because as a consumer, I would want to know why is it better now for the increase that we're getting in the cost, excluding inflation and all this other stuff that's going on. What are they going to be the better, and what are my services going to be the better for this increase in cost?
Well, we would hope that the service would be improved. I mean, basically, I can't, most of the cost that's increased in there is inflationary related. And I would ask Rob if he would add any additional comment to that.
Yeah, so how this works is when we get an RFP, we sit down, we have a 43-page document we go through to, put our pricing together. And that's what we did with this one. We appreciate the partnership through the years with y'all. We're committed to continuing that. We're committed to improving every day. With that commitment, I have the general manager on the call with us. I have the operations manager on the call with us. They're hearing everything you're saying, and we are committed to the city of Brunswick.
My concern is this, and this is Commissioner Williams. A lot of times I think when trash companies bid on the city of Brunswick, they don't really understand our canopy and what the amount of yard debris that's created in this city, especially this time of the year. And that has been a problem, because what happens if we don't get this stuff up in a timely manner, our drains get clogged. So we got another problem. So, and it kind of just rolls downhill from there. And then, as elected officials, we get the phone calls as to why did they just drive by that pile of trash that was out there? And I just put it out there yesterday. Well, I've had it in front of my house for 3 weeks now. And I'm like, I really, it's hard to give people answers when you don't know the answers.
Understood. And we've had discussions in that meeting, Ms. McDuffie discussed, where we are talking about if there's yard waste out and somebody's thrown a cup in it, or small amounts of contamination, that we remove the contamination and pick up the yard waste. Because that's, as was discussed earlier, that's where it starts. You get somebody who leaves yard waste
Amen.
out,
Yes.
and then other
Amen.
people throw stuff in. And we in our meeting, we discussed that if it's small amounts of contamination, we'll go ahead and get it to prevent that in the future.
And what increases that, the potential of it being contaminated is the length of time that it's sitting there. The
It
longer
becomes a
sits there-
compounded issue. Yes, yes.
And so the RFP actually asks for every other week yard waste, but we priced it to do it weekly to prevent this. So our pricing was a little bit out of scope because we believe, as you just said, we need to pick it up weekly and drive by each site weekly, once a week service because of the issues you were just discussing.
Okay, awesome, great. Now that's done and that's consistent, then I think we'll be doing a whole lot better.
I think it's a mindset too, and I understand the efficiency and the amount of residents and the piles and everything that you have to deal with. But, to the degree that the residents want things tidy and neat and they go to the effort on their part, you just it's quid pro quo. You want to know that those that are picking up have the same mindset, that we're in this together, and that, they're not looking for a technicality of, oh, there was a piece of trash and so we're not going to pick it up. And then it just compounds weekly from there. It's not good.
Okay, thank you all. We need to act on this action item.
The motion, Ms. McDuffie, you wanted to continue negotiations and then bring back a contract at a later point, or how's that work? Ms. McDuffie?
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay.
This is just to accept the vendor as Republic for our waste collection services and allow us to negotiate the agreement, and we will bring that back.
That's I'll just say so moved.
Thank you.
I think that's correct.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the motion, please?
It's whatever.
I just,
Deputy said.
yeah, I moved to accept the statement that Ms. McDuffie made to
Accept Republic as the vendor for our waste collection services and to give us the authority to negotiate an agreement.
and I so moved.
And I second it.
Those motion and second for that approval, submittal, request, excuse me. Are there any further comments concerning it?
No, my only comment is we're approving something before we've actually finalized.
No, I think we're approving for her to negotiate
With Republic.
with that particular vendor. Yes, you are. We are approving that part.
That's all.
But we're not approving figures and final numbers and that sorts of thing.
No, that's not the motion.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're
That's good. That's good catch, Julie.
we're strong going in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that we're not committing to something in hopes of, working something better.
Right. I think we also have opportunity to, if this doesn't pan out, we still have time to negotiate with someone else.
So primarily, this process is an incomplete process at this point in time.
What she negotiates is going to come back to us for approval.
Yes.
Right. In terms of what the service will finally
Okay.
be, what the cost will finally be, what the terms will finally be, that will come back to the commission.
And if there's no agreement, if Ms. McDuffie can't get an agreement, then I guess you can do another RFP or whatever, however it has to work. Is that
Right. I just want to make sure that we're still in a position of strength.
Yes, we are. Because we can go elsewhere.
You know, one thing you might want to consider, Regina, is maybe a 90-day renewal, doing things this way. I think you're on track, but maybe a 90-day renewal.
I think we got enough time right now, Commissioner Casey.
Well, I don't know, because I'm not part of the negotiating, but if you've got 90 days after April 2022, I think you've got plenty of time.
Yeah, it's true. It's always good to have more time.
Is that acceptable?
Well, depends on if we're willing to amend their motion.
I'm with you, Johnny.
Well, I'm asking Republic. Bart, is that right?
It's Rob and Bart.
Rob, I'm sorry, excuse me. Okay, I thought I got Bart somewhere.
Yeah, Bart is one of Bart Keller, I think, and Rob Carter.
And I am sorry, what is the question again? This is Rob.
Regina, do you want to ask that?
Well, the commission is asking that we have extend our date right now to 90 days past the April 1st.
If needed,
to complete negotiations.
Well, we were actually under contract through August, but we received the letter terminating it at the end of March from the city. Or that time would have been in there.
Right. Well, we would have been up until August though, which we did not want to extend it a full year.
Okay.
So we're requesting that the date be extended from beyond April 1st if needed to continue or finalize negotiations.
Under the current terms or under new terms?
Under the current terms.
I would have to get back with you on that. That's above my level.
Okay.
But that's something we can request, am I right, commissioners?
Yeah, it sounds like we should rescind the letter canceling the contract perhaps. Anyway, I think we're on the right track. Let them get back to us. But what would be wrong with extending to August?
To August or to April?
No.
Yeah. Well, the only thing is that we were, the recycling and some of the other terms that we were trying to change and upgrade will just be extended. But
Okay.
I think I'd rather let him get back to us on that.
That's fine. Me.
Thank you.
All right, so the motion will not be amended. Any other further questions or comments, commissioners? I think we have beat this horse quite a bit now. So all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Are there anyone opposed? Hearing nothing from the opposed, I believe the ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, thank you, Ms. McDuffie, and all who was concerned on this issue, involved with this issue. All right, we move right along. Item number 8 on our agenda. Consider approval of Goodyear Park grant proposal. Ms. McDuffie, you're presenting this again. as well?
Yes, this is for we did apply for a $30,000 or $25,000 grant from National Fitness Campaign. You know, we talked about this in our park improvement plan earlier in the year, and we did apply for the grant because we had to go forth with the process of applying, and it was for a $25,000 grant. We did receive approval for that grant, and we are now going to, with the acceptance of it, go forth and try and solicit additional funding to promote and support this project. This is would be a fitness court, which there was a picture of it provided in your packet. And also, I think we had provided a picture previously of the fitness court, which we want to place in Goodyear Park, which is in close proximity to the hospital and to the college. And we are going to work with other partners to try and get additional funding. Currently, the total cost is estimated to be $165,000. Of that, the city, and I can share my screen if I need to, but this information was in the in your packet. The total cost was $165,000 for installation and for acquisition of the fitness court. The grant was approved at $30,000, even though the request was $25,000. And the city has approximately $75,000 in the parks improvement funds that we had allocated for the SPLOST to support this project. And we would be looking for additional funding from other entities or donations or in kind, possibly for $60,000, which would make up the $165,000.
Are we gonna ask a hospital, I guess?
We are talking with the hospital and the college and looking at other sponsors such as the banks and some other, the fitness community. The court would have opportunities for advertising and marketing on the facility. So those are packages that we would be going forth with to the other entities to provide some marketing opportunities for them.
Wow, this is great. Something new in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think, you know, as we have presented in our parks improvement plan, we have, you know, the splash pad that's going into Orange Park, and we hope to make an announcement about that soon. We have the futsal court that's already been started being installed at Perry Park. And now we would have the fitness court at Goodyear Park. And this would be, you know, provide opportunities for activities. They have competitions that they promote around these type courts. And they would provide, you know, other communities to come and join in certain competitions that we could have annually.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners? All right, so I entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we approve the fitness court grant proposal for Goodyear Park.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second to approval of the Goodyear Park grant proposal. I think that's $30,000. Plus, we're gonna, as our city manager alluded to, provide $70,000 from our SPLOST funds, and also soliciting public input, public agency to input as well. Any further questions or comments on this?
Yeah, Regina, do you plan to wait until you get the 60,000 to commit to this thing, or what are you proposing?
Well, there's a resolution that I think Naomi sent it out. Unfortunately, you may not have gotten it in your packet, but she had sent it out. And the resolution basically states that we are entering into agreement with the intention of developing the partners, but the commitment is kind of dependent upon the funding being completed. So our commitment is pending completion of funding for the project.
All right.
Which includes the donations.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any further comments?
You know, one other thing that I just want to throw in, it doesn't have a thing to do with the walking, I mean, with what we're talking about, but we've got some huge pine trees in that park. And while we're there working, I wish we could take a look at maybe doing something in there that wouldn't be a lightning rod to what we're doing here, like some oak trees or some planting. Just take a look at that, if you will, Regina.
You mean adding some trees?
No, taking the pine trees down
Take
and
the pine trees out and make it a more people-friendly park.
Okay.
You've got wind to consider. Those are all volunteers. They all came up on their own, and they're a hazard. We're in a wind velocity.
I agree.
Keep Brunswick Golden Isles beautiful. You know, they always have the citrus tree.
Yeah. It's
that
a good
they-
opportunity,
yeah.
I think, Julie, to look into something like
Sure.
that and get a
Yeah.
hazard out.
And also Forward Brunswick has a project right now where they are planting 99 trees in commemoration of the Liberty ships. So that may be an opportunity as well for some tree planting in that area. But I agree, I think that it
I was gonna
does
say-
need some beautification, and the trees need to be more, I guess, outdoor friendly, if that's a term.
They need to.
I like
they
that.
need to be more-
Trees
they-
that are outdoor friendly.
They need to be more hurricane proof.
You got it. I believe that too.
Well, yeah, but I think it does lend itself to have just a better tree configuration to make the park more conducive for usage.
that's good. You know,
That's the definition of outdoor friendly.
we took down
I
trees
agree.
over the street at one time because it just wasn't feasible. So I'm open to taking down some of those tall pine trees and planting something more outdoor friendly.
Well, we'll certainly look at that. And I think that's a good, very good suggestion in terms of us completing the look of the park and the upgrades.
You know, and I'd like to say this too, is that I would like to look at those pine trees as a form of revenue and not something to go in a landfill.
Yes.
That would really be the way to remove those things, would be to see if we can't get somebody to go in and harvest them and use them commercially.
Right. Well, we may get them to take them down and free of charge by taking ownership of the trees.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
However we can do it, I would like for it to be a revenue producer.
Yes.
We do have a representative from National Fitness Court on the line, and I'll ask her if she has any comment at this time. Kara, do you have any comment?
No, I think we're good. We also have Mike Cole from NFC on the line, so I'll let him answer as well.
I think we're all set. Thank you all for having us.
I got a question. How long would it take to actually put the court there?
Ms. McDuffie, this is Mike. Would you like me to answer that?
Certainly.
Yeah, so it's pretty quick. Once a concrete pad is laid down, usually there's a dry time that's associated with that for about 30 days, and then takes our national installation partner, about 3 or 4 days with 3 or 4 people to install the fitness court.
That's great. Mr. McDuffie, as we do that, make sure our signs go out that says your SPOS dollars are at work. Of course, we putting something else with it too as well, but, we need to advertise as much as possible about our SPOS dollars.
Yes, and this can be something community engagement wise. We have not talked much about, the public school involvement on the financial side or anything, but as far as public school participation, I think it would be great to have some competitions with the school system as well. And, just a really nice community type activity engagement around the particular, the court. And it will have a very pronounced opening, so that people can come out and see it. There will be competition staged, there will be games staged and things like that when we open it up.
Yes, also, recently, I think you and I went to talk to the College of Coastal Georgia Student Advisory Committee. That may be something they may want to get involved with as well.
Very, very much. That's one of the reasons I think it's important to, keep open the communications with the college, because they can help with things like this.
Regina, if my memory serves me right, this idea came up at a neighborhood planning association several years ago. Is this a fruition of that planning meeting?
I'm not exactly sure where it originated.
Yeah.
I don't really know, but we were just looking at improvements for our parks. So it may have come from that originally, but I'm not sure.
It was several years ago they talked this idea, so maybe so.
Well,
Okay.
hopefully we can.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if that's the case, then yes, I hope that we can say, the community was pushed for this and we got it done.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Ms. McDuffie, and thank everyone for your comments concerning that. We had a motion, we had a second. So all in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Do we have any opposers? No, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Item number 9 on our agenda, consider approval of intergovernmental agreement by and between the city of Brunswick and Glenn County. Ms. McDuffie, you are presenting again.
Well, thank you for, entertaining me this much this evening. But we were just trying to get a lot of things done and, pushing them forward. And this was one of the things Commissioner Walter Rafalski had offered to give the city or provide $250,000 of funding for improvements in the city to support infrastructure improvements and other things, and ask for us to provide a method in which he could do this. So Brian worked with the county attorney to develop a IGA or intergovernmental agreement so that he can provide funding for improvements within the city. We are asking for the $200,000 to be invested in our squares, because right now we don't have any money left to continue the improvements that we've started in the squares. And, the squares are a very vital part of the revitalization of our downtown as well as our residential areas. So we want to continue to make the improvements that are needed in our squares downtown. Plus, they are used by, visitors and residents and people from the city and county. So we felt like the impact of those improvements would be widespread. An additional $50,000 is being used for sidewalk improvements, and those improvements will be in areas in and around downtown as well to provide, support of the infrastructure downtown and revitalization of the downtown area. So we're asking for approval of the intergovernmental agreement where we will do the improvements, and then the county will basically reimburse the city for those improvements once they're done.
Commissioners, as you heard City Manager say this, I've talked with Commissioner Raflowski, and he has gracefully wanted to do this because he realized he's a commissioner at large, which means that all, money, some of his $1 million that was given to him, as well as the other commissioners, he wants to do something for the city. I think it's very commendable. I think this is something that we haven't had this in a long time. That city and county working together, and a commissioner wanting to do something as of this nature in the city like this. So, are there any questions or comments before? Well, excuse me. What are your comments before I ask for a motion?
I commend Commissioner, I commend Commissioner, oh Lord, pronounce his last name.
Rafalski,
Walter. Because he had talked to me about some stuff previously as well. And so that's in my 8 years, he is the first one that has come that is a commissioner at large to even make that gesture. So I do thank him and respect him in that manner.
And I would go that far, if not farther, in saying that as a city and a community, that we really appreciate that very much. And I think we look forward to leveraging those funds as much as we can moving forward with those improvements.
Yes.
I'd just like to say that I agree wholeheartedly with this. I really do. But when it comes up again, let's remember that the county and the city use the cemeteries out there together also. And
definitely, Johnny, definitely.
I think that, this is absolutely necessary to do right now, and it's a windfall. Just let's remember the next time.
Well, we have a little money left to do some things in the cemeteries, and we're working to see, how we can make those improvements with the fencing and everything, but we don't have any money left for the square. So we wanted to kind of continue those projects, but yes, I think that's equally important.
Well, I hope I've offered some suggestions for that, but anyway, that's something else to tackle.
I just want to say that I think that this is something that's been, could have been done, may have been done in the past. But for whatever reason, it happened now, and we're certainly grateful and we're certainly thankful to Commissioner Rafalski for his generous donation to the city of Brunswick, and hopefully some of the other county commissioners will follow suit and bring some additional funding.
Yes, hopefully they understand this is one community, and in a community we all would do well when we help each other. So that's one good thing. And so I'm proud of being here, and also Mr. Commissioner Rafalski for what he's doing.
What this really amounts to is we're getting some of our county paid tax dollars back. And it is mighty nice. It really is. And I agree wholeheartedly that this could happen again with Commissioner Williams. I think it should happen again.
Yes.
No pun intended.
All right. Any other comments? All right, then. No, I entertain a motion, please, on this.
Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we enter a intergovernmental agreement with the city of Brunswick, Glenn County, regarding the funds provided by Commissioner Walters.
Second.
Motion second for us to enter into this intergovernmental agreement between city and Glenn County concerning transmittal of funds from Commissioner Walter Rafalski.
I did, if I could, just 1 second, I did speak to the county attorney earlier today, and he just asked if we could make it subject to a county attorney revision. He has
subject to Glenn County's attorney review. I'm pretty sure it's been reviewed by our.
It has, and he has reviewed it as well, but he has a revision. And
sure. subject to their review.
All right, thank you very much.
Any further questions or comments on that? All in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Any opposers? Hearing crickets, that means that motion carries. Thank you, carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Wifrowski as well. Item number 10. Consider approval to purchase $50 gift cards for full-time employees and $25 gift cards for part-time employees. I imagine this is for Christmas, for holiday, excuse me.
Yes, we are attempting to buy each employee a tank of gas because that's what it costs about right now. But yes, we are asking for the normal tradition of the $50 gift cards for our full-time employees and $25 for our part-time employees and seasonal, and at a cost of about $10,750 for this year.
And when will these be distributed?
Sometime, you know, I usually confer with finance for, but we will probably the first week of December. In time enough for people to get that tank of gas before Christmas.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of $50 gift cards for full-time employees and $25 for part-time employees.
Second.
Motion and second for approval of the purchase of $50 gift cards for full-time employees and $25 gift cards for part-time employees for a holiday gift. Is there any other questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? Hearing crickets, I believe the ayes have it, and motion carries. Well, okay, we have come to the end of our printed agenda for this evening. Are there any need for executive session?
Yes, Mayor. There are a couple of items that I would like to brief the commission on in executive session.
Okay, can you be more specific of those items?
On personnel.
Litigation.
Okay, I entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel and litigation.
I'd like to offer a motion to go into executive session for personnel and litigation.
Second.
Motion second for us to go into executive session for personnel and litigation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, all right, that motion carries. We will go into executive session for those two items, and then we will return back to our regular scheduled meeting and adjourn. Okay, we now stand adjourned from this meeting, and we go into executive session, and we will return again, let's say, to adjourn our meeting. Thank you. Back. Is everyone back to our regular meeting?
Mayor, I have just one comment.
Okay. All right, we have returned back from executive session. And now, while we're there, nothing was voted upon, just only discussion, litigation and personnel. So now we're back into our regular session. And before we adjourn, our city manager has a comment.
Yes, Mayor, I'd just like to say, and I know sometimes this is redundant, but I feel like the city is just accomplishing so many different things to help the community that I wanted to point out, you know, that we are helping our employees by working towards saving money and giving out our gift cards. We are helping our citizens through our waste collection and, you know, what we're doing with our parks and our squares. And we're helping out our businesses through the licensing and the annexation. And, you know, every meeting, there's parts of it that impact the whole community. So I just wanted to be on record to say how much great work is being done by the commission in the city. Thank you.
We need to put that up we need to put up our accomplishments. I've been saying that since I've been a commissioner.
Well, yeah, we do. And I think that Ms. McDuffie's doing a great job, and we can certainly improve in a lot of different areas, but I would agree. I think that, Ms. McDuffie has really put forth a huge effort to bring our whole community forward. And I really appreciate that very much.
Definitely, definitely.
Most definitely. I echo those sentiments as well, or those accolades, excuse me, as well. The city of Brunswick has done extremely well, and we've done extremely well with good leadership of our staff, with our city manager and all her directors. We have some good employees here in the city, and we're going to continue to do well. So I thank everybody. I'm so proud to be a part of this commission, and proud to be a part of the city of Brunswick. So, you want us to have any comments before I adjourn?
Encourage people to get out and vote.
Yes, that's one thing we haven't done very well in, everybody. Our voter turnout has been, may go up steadily, little by little, but we got to make giant leaps in that area. Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes.
Enjoy Thanksgiving. Yes.
Safe travels. Thank you.
Just happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving. Be safe out there, everybody, please. All right. We out. We stand adjourned.